Hey everybody, thanks so much for checking out our ABC 3340 web exclusive. We're here in the shadow of the Rose Bowl. It's raining today. It does rain, in fact, in Southern California, and we're lucky enough to be joined by the next round's Ryan Brown. He helps us out on the zone, one of our analysts. And Ryan, busy day between both Michigan and Alabama here at Media Day. It's the only time we really get to talk to everybody on the team. So before we get into some of the nitty-gritty, what's some of the big takeaways you had from the talking to these guys?
You know, you always think of games like this and you think everybody's going to be uptight and nervous. And when you get in situations like this, where it's a little more laid back and it's an interview and people are having fun, they had games on the table for the guys to play for camera, you realize how laid back these guys really are. Yeah. You know, I mean, they're not wound as tightly as you might think, or maybe not even wound as tightly as some of the fans are.
No, you're absolutely right about that. And as we look at this Alabama football team, there are two freshmen that have made quite an impact on offense. Left tackle Caden Proctor, and then on defense, Caleb Downs, who arguably could be a first-round pick if he was eligible this year. We had a chance to talk to both of them. Can you talk about their impact on this team this year and how important they will be Monday?
You know, Downs was a guy that is playing like you thought he would coming in, and he did that pretty early. I mean, there was a bit of a learning curve, but right now that Alabama secondary is about as good as you'll find anywhere in the country. Two corners that'll be first-round picks. They're first-team All-Americans. Downs, Malachi Moore, they'll play in the NFL. Proctor is more of an interesting story to me because he was so bad early. I mean, they were looking maybe to even replace him. He couldn't block, and it just something clicked. And a lot of people say it's when Jaden Roberts was inserted at guard that was just the offensive line that clicked for Alabama. And it's helped Proctor, and he's helped also by a quarterback that's a willing runner. You know, he's not just going to stay in the pocket. He's willing to pull it down and run, and that's going to help a tackle that might miss on occasion.
And speaking of that tight offensive line, they're probably playing their best that they have all season. They physically dominated Georgia for good stretches of that SEC title game against a Michigan team whose moniker is tough, physical. How important is it going to be Alabama to dominate the line of scrimmage to win this football game?
It feels like a line of scrimmage game, doesn't it? Because that's what Michigan is so good at defensively. Their defensive line, they are able to pressure the quarterback and stop the run without dedicating extra guys from the secondary or dedicating their linebackers. And then on offense, you know, you saw it against Penn State. They are more than willing to just line up and run the football. They don't have to throw. Jim Harbaugh's not a guy that's like, oh, I got to throw because of my ego. If 32 runs in a row are there, he's going to run it 32 straight times. So to me, that's the game. Can Michigan line up and play that physical type of football?
Now, speaking of Michigan, they were here earlier. They went before Alabama here at Media Day. And just a takeaway that I had, they're not in pads, they're not in cleats, they're not all taped up, but they don't look as big as they've probably been billed. SEC speed is something we say a lot down in the Southeast. Is that overrated, or is Michigan's physicality, quote unquote, being a little overrated?
You know, it's not to the degree of the Notre Dame game back in the 2012 National Championship, the 2013 BCS Championship game. But in that game, I'll never forget walking down to the sideline and seeing Notre Dame come out in the pads. And I remember thinking, this team does not match up physically. There's no way this team can stay on the field physically with that Alabama team in the other locker room, and of course they didn't. It's not to that degree, and it's not in pads, as you said, but I noticed the same thing. You look at that team, it does not look like, as they say in football, on the hoof, does not look like an SEC team. Doesn't mean Alabama's going to automatically win the game, but I don't disagree with your assessment there. They don't look like Alabama does.
Final question, Brownie. We call these podium guys. Jalen Milroe was over here, Dallas Turner, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Give me a non-podium guy that's going to be an X factor Monday against Michigan.
I mean, the easy answer would be Isaiah Bond. He was not up there, and he's developed into, I think, Alabama's best receiver. With all due respect to Jermaine Burton, Bond is a guy that was just kind of the speed guy that could beat you deep to start the year and has developed, I think, into an all-around receiver. And he'll test that Michigan secondary. They've faced some good receivers, obviously Marvin Harrison Jr., but I would say Bond, you know, just off the cuff, I would say is probably a top 5 receiver they faced this year, if not higher. So I would say Isaiah Bond. He was not on the podium, and that is a really easy answer. So as you know from watching the zone, I'm going to give you the easy answers. I don't have to throw it downfield in double coverage. I'll check down every now and then to Speaks.
And when there was a lot of people, they didn't know if Alabama would be in this game. No, never wavered. Ryan Brown said they would not leave the SEC out, and here we are in Southern California. We'll get his game prediction coming up probably tomorrow or day after, because we're here all week. We're breaking it all down. Your coverage of Alabama here in the Rose Bowl. But for now, for Ryan Brown, I'm Johnny Congdon, ABC 3340 Sports.